Today, the main headline from the horse stream media, from prostitutes from Fox News to MSNBC and CNN, was very important news: Barack Obama chewing gum in China during a conference. These people have no respect for your intelligence at all. They're covering Obama chewing gum. Meanwhile, the world is almost close to brink with war with Russia. Now, why is Obama, first of all, chewing gum excessively in China after he just met with Putin and the Chinese leadership? And that's primarily because, as a former cigarette smoker, Barack Obama really wants a cigarette. He wants a cigarette because he's really nervous. Why is he really nervous? There's a lot of events happening in the world right now that are getting no mention at all in the American mainstream media, such as Russian soldiers, tanks, and army personnel going into Ukraine. They are rearming the rebels in separatist-held territories in Ukraine, and no one's really talking about this. Europe, the EU, Ukraine are extremely worried about this situation because it seems like it's just coming back to where it started, and the conflict between Russia, the EU, NATO, Ukraine are coming to a head. Russian planes are also flying and patrolling near the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico. Russia also just set out a new deal with China that narrows the windows for U.S. exports, and it threatens the U.S. dollar world reserve currency. There's also a lot of tensions all the way up in the Arctic, unclaimed land that Russia says it owns, the U.S. says it owns. There's a lot of war games going on right now between the different countries in that region because they found national oil and national resources there. And different countries are vying for control of that region and say that they own it. So this is another head kind of scenario where the two countries, Putin and Barack Obama, are facing off between each other, and it seems like China is one of the key components in this deal. Now, the deal that Russia and China signed definitely signified a close tie between Russia and China. During this conference, you could see Vladimir Putin very confidently, very smiling. You see Barack Obama worried. I think that's why he was chewing the gum as excessively as he was. Putin is doing everything in his power to stand in the way of U.S. hegemony. He openly talks about it. He gives speeches about it. And there's no mention of this in the mainstream media. And of course, Russia's not the only one flexing their military muscle. If you look at the map of Russia and where NATO U.S. Military bases are located, they pretty much have Russia surrounded as well. There's also talks in the mainstream media about a very important deal that the U.S. signed with China today that limits carbon emissions. This is a slight jab at Russia. Since Russia just signed this big oil deal with China, China is now going to lower its carbon emissions, its use of oil, and that is supposed to hurt Putin. And that's why the New York Observer is saying that Putin, who no longer wants to sell oil to Europe, got a bad deal with China, sold China oil at a very cheap price, and now the U.S. Kind of had a little snide attack against Russia with this meeting by getting China to agree to lowering their carbon emissions, lowering their use of gas and oil. But this is all happening in a very weird scenario because it's very hard to understand where China lays in this, because in one point they're very close to Russia, and another point they're very close to the United States. It seems almost like they're playing the middleman as they're building up their military. As far as selling oil to Europe, as this article mentioned, Putin, a lot of people don't know this in the United States, Ukraine and all of Europe is dependent of oil primarily by Russia. Ukraine owes Russia $5.6 billion for gas that they bought. They are indebted to Russia for $5.6 billion. In a recent speech Putin gave, he said, I'm not limiting the sales of oil to Ukraine and Europe. I'm just saying, if Ukraine pays their debt to us, we will sell them the oil at a regular price. Many people in the U.S. mainstream media are saying that Putin is just being vindictive against Europe, but when Ukraine does owe $5.6 billion for purchasing gas from Russia before, and is not paying that back, it makes kind of logical sense. Oil obviously plays a key role in this. The U.S. dollar is based on the petrodollar, and we see even within the last 10 years, many key countries like Libya who were going after and saying that they're not going to use the U.S. dollar to sell oil. They said that they're going to start using gold dinars, and that they're going to join up with other African countries and work among themselves and share natural resources among themselves. What happened with Libya? NATO and the United States ended up bombing the country and pretty much ruined it to its core. Right now, if you go to Libya, it is a torn, destroyed state with many different factions fighting each other. As you know, just a few years ago, the U.S. and NATO made a case for humanitarian purposes. We need to bomb Libya, get rid of Gaddafi, because he's a horrible leader. There was a lot more dealing with the petrodollar that was involved in that situation. Same with Iraq. In 2001, Iraq said that they're not going to sell oil in dollars, they're going to use euros. And because of that, Iraq was also invaded. There's Syria. There's Syria that blocked a pipeline that Saudi Arabia was planning a pipeline with Iraq, with Syria, with Turkey that was going to bypass Russia from giving oil to Europe. Saudi Arabia wanted this pipeline built through these four major countries. Saudi Arabia said okay, Iraq said okay, Turkey said okay, and they were going to get rid of Russia's dependence on selling oil to Europe. Syria was the only country back in 2007 who said no, we're going to stick close to our allies, Russia, and we're not going to screw them over for this deal. Saudi Arabia promised them lots of money. Syria and Assad said no, and look what happened in the situation with Syria. The U.S. again saying that they need to bomb this country for humanitarian purposes, which makes no sense at all. It's like fucking for virginity. It's totally backwards. The U.S. Was saying that we're going to have to go bomb Assad. When Russia heard about this, they sent their ships and they sent a blockade along in the Gulf Coast here. American warships were in this area, and because of American people and because of Russia setting this blockade, the U.S. did not bomb Assad, did not bomb Syria. In the meantime, the U.S., Saudi Arabia, Turkey, even Israel was giving money to rebels, which we now find out are ISIS rebels. The other two countries that are against the U.S. dollar is Iran and Turkey. Now, obviously, these are the two countries threatening the petrodollar, and obviously these two countries have sanctions against them right now. It makes perfect sense. Now, a lot of people in the mainstream media forgot and neglected, other than the New York Times, totally neglected a very important speech that Putin made, where he named the talk World Order, New Rules or a Game Without Rules, where he broke down how the U.S. was getting involved in Ukraine, how they messed up the situation in Syria by arming the rebels. It was an extremely honest and harsh talk by Putin, who says that the United States is threatening the world order, that we need a kind of new world order, and that Russia's needs are not being met. And then journalists asked him really hard-hitting questions, and he was on point. You really have to watch this video to understand where Putin is coming from. The New York Times botched their articles about this speech, didn't make it about the issues that he was talking about. And again, they were one of the few people that actually mentioned it. It was a very important speech that laid out the position point of what Russia is going through. Even in this speech, a journalist asked Putin about crushing dissent, and then he fired back. He was like, okay, look what happened with Occupy Wall Street in the United States. He fired back about the current situation in Ukraine and how the EU and US were getting involved to pull Ukraine away from Russia. He pointed at the situation in Syria. It was an extremely honest talk, and you really get a standpoint of why Putin is standing in the way of Barack Obama, and why these two people, this Cold War is still continuing. In the United States, the mainstream media absolutely has no respect for your intelligence at all. While these major events are happening and unfolding, and there's countries invading other countries and setting up key geopolitical strategies against each other. The United States, in Time Magazine, is talking about college athletes and college fucking sports. In Asia, in the Middle East, and the United States, sorry, not in the United States, in Europe, in Asia, and in the Middle East, the cover of Time had Vladimir Putin on it. In the United States, we were suppressed to college sports, which shows you the utter lack of disrespect that mainstream media has for you. They want to keep you in the dark. They want to keep you ignorant. They don't want you understanding the key geopolitical strategies that are happening all over the world, because it exposes this plan for a new world order. There's a reason why Zbigniew Brzezinski and Hillary Clinton called Putin worse than Hitler, because he stands in their way of establishing this world order, this U.S. hegemony, this U.S. control. So it's very interesting to see all of this unfold, and for no one to really get a full understanding of it or really break it down to you as it's happening right now. But you see two major forces going up against each other. I'm not saying one is better than the other. It doesn't look good. Putin is standing in the way as much as he can of the American New World Order. The Americans are pissed. It's leading to a very horrible situation. Who knows how it will unfold. But being in this movement for about 12 years now, doing research on this for 12 years now, Russia, China, and the United States, major key players, are vying for control of this world order, of this world control. And it's insane seeing it being unfolded right in front of us. Meanwhile, everyone's talking about Barack Obama chewing fucking gum. It's insane. If you liked this video, you found it useful, and you got information on it that you didn't get from these corporate horse stream puppets, click like and subscribe. I hope you stay tuned for more videos coming your way.